Hey, welcome back to the shop. Got a fun project today. Really good friend of mine sent me this knife that was damaged here. As you can see, broke the tip off. Now this is a fun project because a lot of people, they would look at this knife and go, man, this knife is kind of ruined, and they don't really know what to do. But we're gonna put this tip back on here, and we're not going to do it exactly the way you might be inclined to, right? Most people, because they don't have knife making equipment, they just would have a stone. They would sharpen and sharpen and sharpen until they could bring this edge back up to meet this point. And that'll work, right? And if that's what you got is sharpening stones, then it makes a lot of sense to do that. However, there is a little problem with that. It's not the perfect solution. Let's look at what's going on here. So here's your blade, and it's broken. The problem is, with most production knives like this, there's no way you'll see this on camera, but there it is. They're hollow ground. And what that means is, if this is the top spine of the knife, where all your meat is, they are ground out, they are dished out like this. They are hollow on the sides, and then they curve back out so that there's a little bit of meat here where the cutting edge goes. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Hollow ground knives, I mean, they're sharp as can be, they're light, they're great. I like hollow grinds myself. I don't do them, I do flat grinds, because a flat grind, you have a pure wedge. So you can take a flat ground knife, imagine coming from this corner here, straight down to the apex, and here to here. It makes for an extremely thin, because see, your edge would be even thinner than this, thinner than a knife edge you're used to. Super thin, but very strong, because that steel is supported all the way up. Now in production knives, it doesn't really make sense to flat grind. They can hollow grind them a whole lot easier because it's done on automated machinery. And a lot of custom makers do hollow grinds too. So neither here nor there, just showing you the difference between flat ground and hollow ground and what challenges are presented here. If this was a pure wedge with the tip broke off, it'd be a no-brainer. You just bring this on up here. However, the problem we're going to have is, see where it's broken off here? Let me get a pen. Since it's broken off, the tip is broken off, what we really have is this. And if we were to sharpen this edge up to here, what that means is we're getting rid of this piece, right? We would be bringing our sharpening up through here, and you're already in that thin hollow. Now, this is exaggerated on paper. I mean, look at what we got to work with here. I mean, there's nothing there in that hollow. So if we were to bring the tip up, you would have an extremely weak tip, right? Because you're at the very thinnest part of this blade. So what we're going to do is, instead of cutting up into this really thin hollow here, what we're going to do is bring this down. We'll come up a little bit, but we're going to bring the spine down and then bring this up just a little bit, so that what I want to do is have the edge here where most of that meat is still left. And that's going to give him a durable edge back, so that it doesn't just snap on him again. Because if we were to have the edge up in here, anything you did with this tip, it would just snap again. So again, meaty, you can see where the grind is, right? We're going to come down here where most of the meat is, and maybe bring this up just a little bit, because we want to continue this line. We want to make it look normal, and we kind of want to put the center line of the tip back where it was. If this knife was complete, right, the tip would be about here. So we want to come back we want to come back and put the tip kind of where it was. And it won't look funny because we'll move this steel out of the way. And it's going to look right. So let me show you how I do that. So what I want to do is to bring that tip down. So I'm actually going to grind the back side of the blade like this, right? And bring that down. And then we'll come back and bring that cutting edge to the spine on both sides. All right, here we go. All right, so here's our knife, and we are going to, as we talked about before, we are going to bring the fat part down to the skinny part. Let's start with a 220 grit belt. Put the lights on. Bringing the fat part down first to grind the spine. I'm dipping this in the water to quench it because I don't want to overheat the tip. So now we have our tip back on the knife, and the center line of the blade looks correct. I'll try to block some of this light out from the back. All right, that looks good. And as you can see, it's just a nice soft drop off. And what I'll do to kind of blend the shine is I'll blend this out by hand so that the finish looks right, because it's basically a bead blasted finish. So what I'll do is I'll put a nice vertical scratch pattern like I do on a handmade knife down here so that all of this will blend in. I'll show you that later. And so while we've got it, let's go ahead and sharpen it for him. When you're sharpening a knife on a belt especially, but anytime you sharpen a knife, stones or not, the way that you gauge your progress sharpening is by raising a burr. When you're sharpening, no matter how you do it, when you pull I'm going to pull my fingernail across the blade off the edge, because you'll never get cut going this way. So what you want to do is slide your thumbnail across that edge and see if you can feel a burr. A burr is going to be a snag. I don't know if you can hear that. I've raised a burr all the way on that edge. So what I want to do to make sure that's not just a rolled edge is I'm now going to run it this way and knock that burr off, but it ought to raise a burr this way, because that burr, as you put pressure on the blade, it'll push the burr this way. Then you'll sharpen this side and push the burr that way. And if you don't get all the way through the burr, you're just going to keep flopping that back and forth until you get this super thin piece of metal that flops back and forth. And when it's straight, you'll think it's sharp, it's like a laser beam. But what you've really got is called a wire edge. And we are going to keep sharpening that burr until it looks like foil. And you'll see little flakes of foil come off. And when you run this across the edge, what you're going to see is that little shiny hairline of a burr, you'll see that disappear as it runs across the belt. If you can't see the burr disappear, you're not getting rid of the burr. You're just flopping it back and forth. And that's why when you sharpen your knife, it's sharp as can be and it won't hold the edge. It's not that it won't hold the edge, you never really got to an edge. You got to a wire edge that's flopping around. And when it's straight, it's sharp, and when it's bent over, it's dull. Got to get rid of that. We're going to finish on a leather strop. I don't know if you'll be able to see or not. See this burr come off. We're going backwards across leather that has a rubbing compound on it, or polishing compound. It's just green chrome. This stuff right here. You dress your leather with it. Now you're not applying a whole lot of pressure, just a nice, you start off with a firm pressure because you want that leather to grab that raggedy burr on the edge. And as you're going, you'll feel it. You'll feel it begin to smooth out. Now this knife was already sharp when it came off that belt, but this is going to refine that edge, break that burr off, and polish the cutting edge left behind after the burr is gone. I can't tell you how valuable stropping is. If you put together a leather strop like this and just use it, you know, every once in a while on your knife, you'll be shocked that you almost never have to sharpen your knife. The only time you'll ever have to take your knife to stones is when you've, you know, physically damaged the edge. But if you do this and just maintain that edge, it will stay sharp for a very, very long time.